Hey, did you ever play the original Assassin's Creed game? Were your favorite parts the 15 seconds that Desmond spent walking between the bed and the Animus? Well, if so, then I've got a movie for you! Ha ha ha! Assassin's Creed sucks. I've been saying for months that this movie is gonna suck, and I admit I went in with low expectations, but I should have aimed lower. So first off, this story does not follow Desmond Miles. This follows some guy named Cal. He's a different protagonist who has a different ancestor with a different adventure. I can accept something like that. You can mix something up like that a little bit, but when you focus the entire story on the Desmond character and not, the actual assassin, you kind of miss the point. We only get the titular assassin character for like 3 or 4 scenes. The rest of the movie, like 75% of it, follows Cal walking around the labs trying to figure out what's going on from his perspective. That was not why people played the games. You played the games to be this badass assassin who goes around killing people and running around on rooftops, not to find out what the nerdy guy wants to have for lunch. Yes, that's an actual scene. So the movie has to start entirely from scratch because we don't have the same protagonists that we're familiar with. We're not following the same assassin that we're familiar with. We don't have any of the same characters. This is an entirely new story. So right off the bat, the movie gets itself an unnecessary handicap. And if that's not enough, the characters aren't even remotely likable. Cal, played by Michael Fassbender, spends so much time just brooding around and acting all angsty. He had a tough life because apparently when he was like 10 or something, his father murdered his mother and then he had to go and live on his own. I'm not sure how. I mean, the movie never specifies, did he live in a foster home? Did he live on the streets? Did he join the military? There's no way to tell. All that we do know is that 30 years later he murders someone, he's sentenced to death, and then the bad guys fake his death and take him into their laboratories. And Cal spends the entire movie standing around like, I had a very difficult childhood. You wouldn't understand. I hate my father. And I would say that was a problem with Fassbender's acting, except everyone acted that way. Literally, just about every single member of the cast just put up this brick-faced wooden display. It was like trying to watch a brick wall emote. But anyway, the bad guys, Abstergo Laboratories, proceed to use Cal in an attempt to discover something called the Apple of Eden. The Apple of Eden is an ancient device which, within the context of the movie, is supposed to contain the genetic code for man's free will. I don't remember it being that from the game, but I never finished 3, so whatever. And this was the part I hated the most in the movie. As we've seen in the trailer, the Animus is this giant crane thing that looks like GLaDOS from the Portal series. It hooks onto Fassbender's back, hoists him in the air, and he does all these stunts as he's reliving them through his ancestors' memories. And all the while, you got all these holographic projections going around, and we're seeing what he's seeing, but at the same time we're flipping back to the memories directly, so we're seeing them from his ancestors' perspective. And the entire time, I'm looking at this, I'm like, why? What practical use does this have when in the games, the Animus was a table? It's not just a giant fucking crane in the sky, it's a table! Oh sure, maybe the movie makers wanted to have a little more excitement, wanted to have Fassbender jumping around and actually doing shit instead of just lying there on the table. Here's another idea though. Actually show us what the assassin is doing! We don't need to have Fassbender going around in this aerial display, fucking about, climbing things, fighting people we can't actually see. Although we're not supposed to actually be seeing, and that leads me to something else. In the games, everything was seen through the Animus's device. Fine, that worked perfectly well. But here we have this holographic display of the entire room. Is this just a visual representation for the audience so that we can understand what's going on around as Fassbender is fighting people and jumping up walls? Or is this something that the rest of the room can actually see? Are they able to witness this projection? I mean, we see them taking information from the holograms, but at the same time, these are things that could be easily displayed on monitors all around the room. This was such a misstep. This was never the right way to go. And I think part of the reason they wanted to do this was because of authenticity, because all the ancestor himself was, I'm trying to think of his name, Aguilar or something, takes place in Spain. And then, of course, they all speak Spanish. So the focus on Cal was an attempt to get away from having to use subtitles all the time? Well, if that's a concern, then why not just put him in an English country? I mean, if you're going to change the actual assassin, and the country he fights in, and the year he lived in, why not change it to an English-speaking country so we can actually follow without the need for subtitles? England was still a place in 1492. Oh, they just did not think. And speaking of action scenes, you can barely follow what's going on with those either. Everything darts around so quickly and with so many camera cuts that you cannot follow what's going on. In the first scene that we see him, I completely lost track of who the hell Aguilar was. When your fight scenes are so bad you can't even tell who the main character is, you gotta rethink your cinematography. And this all started out so promisingly because the opening scene, we see the assassins gathering around in 1492 Spain talking about ultimately the plot of the movie, fighting the Templars. And Aguilar goes through a ritual in which he loses his ring finger, which, if you played the games, you will remember, was a thing that they did because the hidden blade on their wrists, pretty much the most popular assassin's weapon from the games, would get in the way. So starting out, I thought, okay, well, it's not going to be perfect, but maybe they're trying to be a little clever with their adaptations. They're trying to have some loyalty. No, that's pretty much the only shred of loyalty in the entire movie. Everything else just goes right downhill. As an adaptation, this is absolutely miserable. And it's not even good technically. There's one scene about midway through the movie when Cal's walking down the halls with the head of the laboratories. And they're just discussing the plot, trying to get Cal to jump into the Animus willingly, and that's a whole separate issue that I don't have time for here. And we see the main psychologist, whatever the hell she was, woman who was working with Cal, looking at a security footage of the two of them walking down the hall. And it's scrolling backwards, and the only way this can work is if there's a security guard holding a security camera standing literally 4 feet in front of them, walking backwards, hoping he doesn't run into anybody. Would it have been too hard to put a camera somewhere up in the corner on the walls? I really don't even have that much good to say about it. I mean, the costuming was good, I'll give it that, and a lot of the set pieces were good, but most of those were computer generated, so do with that as you will. I just cannot recommend this movie to anyone, especially not a fan of the games. So, one more funny story. I went to see this movie with my roommate, and as soon as the movie was over, he turned to me and said, "Okay, what did you think?" I sat there in silence for a few seconds before I told him, "This movie was so stupid, I'm going to have to review this using an entirely different format. So, I may try a Red Letter Media style on this one."